Well, listen, everybody, let's get started. I'm going to continue to let folks in. Those of you who have been on this webinar or podcast, however it's going to be distributed afterwards, know that this is a casual conversation. We've created practice habits to really give back to the practice and industry leaders who've taught and challenged and encouraged me through my career. Early on, leading from the Midwest, it can kind of feel lonely. And it's often said that leadership is lonely, especially at the top. And that was certainly the case for me at times. And so I just want to remind everybody why we do this. Practice Habits is to share the best ideas, proven practice patterns, and practical insights. And today, maybe even spiritual or deep thinking that exceptional leaders and organizations can learn from. And our hope is that each one of these conversations gives you a little something that you can reflect on and use in your practice or business or community. So, my little saying is that practice becomes habit, and habit becomes character, and character, legacy. And with that, I'm just happy to introduce one of my very close friends. I would say one of my very best friends, but best friends talk more. And I let my relationship with John slide from time to time just because I know he's doing good and rocking it. And he does the same thing with me. But if there was such thing as a professional wingman, he would be mine. And I for sure would be honored to be his. He's one of the smartest human beings I know. We went to college together, and I tried copying off of him, so I know this firsthand. He never allowed it and it wouldn't have been smart because teachers would have known. The C's and then a sudden A wouldn't probably be it'd be too obvious. But I joke. Dr. Berdahl is one of our leaders at Vance Thompson Vision and is fellowship trained in cornea and glaucoma and does a tremendous amount of refractive cataract and refractive surgery. He is really one of the business brain trusts behind what makes Vance Thompson Vision great. And more than that, he's a very, very complete human being and individual. He's a wonderful dad and a wonderful husband and a great thinker with a high amount of ethics. And so I look up to him in a lot of ways. And it's really going to be fun today talking with you, John, about leadership, specifically about burnout. And you and I have, shared content that we can, work through together with just my own experience. But you're also no stranger to, tough life and grinding. You've had a couple of companies that you've worked on, some of which have gone swimmingly and some of which have been, a little bit of a mess. And so this is going to be a good conversation about humility and what it takes to kind of measure your life and how you spend your time. So welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, John, before we get into some of the questions.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I love you, buddy. And you can
Hmm.
tell because when we do get those opportunities to see each other, the speech becomes pressured. We try to find a way to get away from the group and go for a walk and talk about everything from the business challenges we're facing to right and wrong to faith to family. And, we'll see what comes out in this conversation. So, to tell you about me, it's a short story. It starts about 150 years ago. My family came into South Dakota on the largest wagon train to enter the Dakota territories about 150 years ago. I don't see opportunity very well, so I'm still here. And I'm an ophthalmologist. That's the first thing professionally that I do. Um, I'm meant to have my hands in eyeballs, doing cataract surgery, cornea transplants, glaucoma. I've had the good and misfortune to start, I think, 7 different companies, varying stages of success. One that failed miserably, crashed hard. We resurrected it and are on the brink of success, but it doesn't it always kind of feel that way with a startup? And and I've got 2 kids, one headed off to college, one that's a 10th grader, a delightful wife, the kind of people that bring the best out of you, surrounded by people that bring the good out of me. Um, and from a professional standpoint, although I'm meant to have my hands doing surgery, my favorite thing is the fellowship. I get the most joy out of the fellows and helping one-on-one grow them in an apprenticeship. And if my wife would choose one word for me to describe me, it would be teacher. And I am a former high school math teacher. But I think that I really do feel like if you have something that you can share with somebody that makes their life better and you don't, that's a sin. And I guess that manifests itself for me in trying to teach, and to the point where sometimes I'll come home and my wife will say, I'm not your fellow. You don't need to to teach
John,
me that.
there's a
But
lot of isms. There's a lot of isms you've taught me over the years or ways of thinking, and you're a great noticer. As is Vance, a mentor to both you and I on how to be just a better human, and he's electric that way. But you've said something to me before that I think is really important, and it's a good way to start our conversation about kind of identity and work and output and rest. And that is that we tend to measure others by their actions, and yet we tend to measure ourselves on our intentions. We measure ourselves on our own intentions. We measure other on their actions or outputs. Break that up for me. Tell us what you mean.
well, first of all, I think it's true. What I meant was what I was trying to do. I didn't mean any harm, but but people don't know our intentions other than, God might know what we're trying to do. And by the way, we might have a tendency to varnish our intentions a little bit and present them as more pure than they actually might have been even in the moment. But we don't know other people's intentions, and we can assume the best or we can assume the worst. And when we're in the healthiest spot, we assume the best, and when we're in the worst spot, we assume the worst. I think that the take-home point there is we should try to align our actions with our intentions, and we should try to align our intention with what is good and right and true.
One, and that's a good setup for the conversation. And I wasn't trying to catch you, with their because that can be something that we hold over ourselves and maybe have too high of expectations. But one of the things that I've always thought about your accomplishment is that your intention is really close to your actual action or output, and that's hard to do. It's really hard to do. Certainly hard to keep up with. And I find with my own intentions, they're grand. And sometimes my action or follow up isn't quite as harmonized with my intentions as possible. And you feel that stress. But I think it's a good way to start the conversation because our intentions, at least to ourselves, are really pure. They're certainly self-serving, but I think that it's a good way to measure or keep in mind the difference between seeing of other people and then also how you're looking at your own work.
I'd like to make a
A
quick
couple of
comment
things. I'd like to just go
on
back.
that.
Sure. Yeah, go
Can
ahead.
I make a quick comment on that?
Anytime.
He froze. You should take a screenshot of that and use
He
that.
froze a little bit. And he said that he might freeze, and that's okay. But um, it's I think it's a good thing to notice, and that, like I said before, he's a great noticer. But just to remember that everybody, at least in the workplace, it seems like if they don't measure up to whatever standards we have, they can be apologetic and they can be kind of sorry about it, but they're sincerely sorry. And there's a very few parts of our kind of working or professional community that doesn't measure up and also kind of resents that they were asked to. Those people don't belong on the team. But I think it's a nice way to start the conversation. Dr. Berdahl, you said, "Can I make a comment on that?" And then I said yes, and then you froze. You with us? Maybe I'll have you call in, and we can just have you by
Okay.
phone. I'll text you.
Let's hope that this comes through.
I'm getting all the screenshots though, just in case he wants to update his LinkedIn profile.
No worries, Dr. Berdahl. It's unfair to actually have you on on screen at the same time anyway because of your blue eyes and your dimples. All the guys on this call prefer you just call in anyway. So,
Amen.
um,
Amen.
so he'll while he's doing that, maybe we'll start with this, and he'll jump into the conversation when we get there. Just over 3 years ago, it was May 17th that, and it was a Tuesday night. I remember because Sarah, we had one of our monthly 12 months of Christmas, and that night it was at a golf outing. For those of you who don't know, Vance Thompson Vision has a commitment to do something socially, or at least did every month with their team to kind of break bread or close out a bar or bring family in, something to kind of build team culture. And it's a great way to stay connected with one another. You tend to like people you spend time with. And Vance and John had pulled me in after work because we had just finished up one of our latest centers growing. You know, we had finished up with I don't even remember which one at the time, but we had just hired a CFO. We had just finished or started the search for a COO. We had a new structure of an executive leadership team that included marketing and human resources. Before that, all of those roles reported up to me, the clinic at each site, and it was just too much. And I remember after work that day, they sat me down and they said, "Listen, we can do something for you that we can never do as partners with one another, and that's that we want you to take some time. You've been running hard, and it's taken a chunk out of your hide." I had spent time at the Askers that year, which was in Washington, D.C. I was right in the middle of a meeting with Johnson and Johnson when I received a call that my middle daughter was kind of in crisis again, and it was the third time because I've got three daughters that a daughter was in crisis, and I had been in other meetings where I learned my wife was in crisis, and I had also been in crisis. All these things were kind of mental health challenges. And fast forward, I left that Askers early, and just a couple weeks later, John and Vance pulled me aside, like I said, after work, and they said, "We want to slow roll this a little bit. You've been pushing hard, and you've been spending a lot of windshield time away from the practice, and we'd like to have you just take a seat for a minute." And this is where I would roll the microphone to John because I had a really hard time hearing that. Um, and I wanted to corner him and ask him if he remembers what I said back. Um, but my very first question to them, and maybe I'll ask Sarah, just because you're the only VTV person with who's in Sioux Falls who has their camera on. Oh, I see John starting. He's going to save the day, Sarah. John, trying again?
Yeah, let's try it again. If not, I'm going to try and move to a better spot. I got new Wi-Fi routers coming today.
No worries. No worries.
Here's,
That'll be
here's the
really
thing I was,
helpful. It'll be helpful for that webinar.
yeah, it really would be great. Here's what I was going to say. It's a little easier to have your actions be consistent with your actions consistent with your intention when you don't have top-down pressure on you. Meaning, if you're a leader in the organization, because I do think that for a lot of these folks that are on the line, you're balancing the pressures from the team that you're leading with the team that you're serving, and saying, what would they think about it? And I don't spend that much time thinking about what somebody else would think about it. I spend most of my time thinking about what's best.
Hmm.
I don't think that most leaders that have someone that they have to report to get that luxury.
Hmm. John, when you were off the line, I kind of redirected the conversation towards May of 2023 when we were a couple weeks out of Askers. Askers was in Washington, D.C. that year. And I had left early because I had a family member in crisis, kind of one of a long string of family crises, and we had just finished the detail work on one of our latest clinics. And you and Vance kept me after work before a team event and asked me to he gave me the gift of a sabbatical. And you said, we'd like it to be 6 months. It's all, all deals are on your incentive plan, your wages, everything is still, we just want you to rest. And I was about to ask Sarah if she knew what my question was back to you. Um, but do you remember what my first question was? It's long drum roll on this. Okay, Sarah, you on now? Do you remember? Do you know what my question was?
I don't know what it was. I would imagine it was, what will the team think?
I bet it was, do I have to?
That's a good guess. That's also a decent guess. That gives me more credit, Joel, than I deserve for liking work. My question was, do you want me back? Right? And then my statement was, there's easier ways to fire me, right? And in a very sweet way, Dan said something to the effect of, it's not exactly the thanks we were looking for, but but I was calloused. I was in a pretty sensitive spot, and these guys had just offered me a time to just rejuvenate, and I was so hypersensitive about what it could mean that I didn't take the hint at first. And we had a great moment. It was a deep moment. They thought that the only way that I might be interested in staying for the long term was if I was able to just kind of reinvest in my family for a minute. They were just in the middle of high school, all three of my girls, and it was such a beautiful time to kind of redirect my priorities. And it just so happened to be at a time when we had the infrastructure to be able to handle that work. And so, after some tears and some prayers with these great leaders who had some great insight and were willing to really invest in me, I felt so incredibly free for a hot second, going to that team event and telling my wife that I'd be home late, but that I had a big story to tell her. But I share that because though it was kind of a clunky way to tell the story, um, with a lot of interruptions and breaks because of technology, I think it's a good way to show how, as leaders, we can want to share some goodness with people, even if they're resistant, maybe even resentful to take it. And I think John and Vance saw what needed to happen in just taking some time. Um, that's evidence of good leadership. Over the next few weeks and months, we prepared for me to take that a month and a half later, I left Vance Thompson Vision for a 6 month sabbatical, and by October, I was sitting down at the end of October with John and Vance and talking about how I didn't think I was coming back, and I didn't know what it was going to do, but it wasn't going to look like it did before. And many people who are on this call, including my own team, are still wondering what I'm going to do to fill my time since I haven't seemed to master my day job now either. Um, John, I was recounting the experience of being in the boardroom with you and Vance when you were talking about the sabbatical and how my first question to you was, do you want me back? And then my statement was, there are easier ways to fire me. And how looking back, it's a little bit of it's a humbling, it's a humbling thing to remember that that's how I reacted to such an amazing gift. It doesn't haunt me. It's a good reminder because it was a kind of a quintessential, it's a remnant of an emotion that I had that I was so hypersensitive and self-conscious about my output that I couldn't imagine something good like that happening in that way. You remember that conversation, John?
I do, and I actually remember it a little differently, Matt, and I don't know if the the truth is probably somewhere in between. I am now sitting in our unfinished basement, the closest I can get to our wireless access point. So we'll see if that works. Matt, I remember, and you can correct me if I'm
I love that
wrong.
we're getting a tour of your home.
You're welcome. That who wants to see an unfinished basement? Here we go. Um, so the how I remember it, Matt, and I remember us sitting there in the conference room. And we said, Bud, life's coming at you pretty hard right now, personally, family, and professionally. And something's got to give for you for a second. And the only one that can is work, because the other ones are you and only you. And I remember you breaking down in tears and saying something along the lines of, thank you, you guys would do that for me, as your first reaction, and then saying, I really need this. As the conversation went on, I remember something to the effect of what you said is, like, you guys want me, right? Something to that effect. But I don't remember it at all as like the first reaction being anything other than gratitude for feeling loved, which you were.
Let's go with yours.
And the other thing that I'll say, Matt, is that those things aren't easy to do on either side. And I'm one of the things that I'm really proud of is how that transition went on both sides of it. But it probably went so well because it was authentic. It wasn't manufactured. It was tended to. It was managed, because of love and care and goodness, but it wasn't manufactured.
Yeah. Well, and we painstakingly have taken 24 minutes, John, to get the introduction done for the setup of our conversation. But with the way where I want the conversation is leaders in our organization and even ourselves, where we don't even recognize that we need a little pit stop. We could use a break. We could use somebody to come in and pump up our tires a little bit for us. What have you learned about noticing that in leaders now? Because you serve of a lot of organizations, and I'm sure that I'm not the person that's run aground.
Yeah. Um, I guess I'll start by saying I'm still learning and that I don't know that I'm that good at it. But here are the things that I've learned. One, people don't react the same way as you or me, meaning I don't have a tendency to really feel burnout that much. I've had hard things and I've had cracks in the armor for sure. And so some people need space and time and breath, and other people need to not stop at the 95-yard line. They need to get the thing done. Otherwise, it'll just loom over them. And there's a lot of variation in between that. I think that it's not good to force somebody to take a break, and it's not good to prevent somebody from taking a break that needs one. And it really comes down, I think, to knowing your team and and that's all. You got to do work to know your team.
Yeah.
And I've been right and
Yeah,
I've been
there's
wrong.
no substitute for time.
Yeah. And you know, knowing somebody that reports to you or that is your peer, knowing them well enough to know when they're hurting and care enough to go and have a conversation and not hold it so tightly that you can work together and offer them something that they may need, but not force it. As I recall, Matt, as we talked, it was an offer, not even a suggestion.
It's so funny that this conversation would be its own therapeutic, movement because of you remember things, and from your perspective that are so much more redemptive than I might think about myself, and that's just, in my case, it's my own human nature. But I do think that we learn a lot in doing it right and wrong, and it is important to know your team. John, one of the things I want to do is, for the sake of time, these are always about a half an hour of conversation, and then we open it up to a bunch of questions. And there's a number of things we could talk about. But I'd like you to just talk about, as we transition to opening it up for people to ask questions, um, as the leader of an organization. And as it relates to your team, what's your number one responsibility as a leader as it relates to your team?
I think that I would answer that question as being worthy of the trust that they place in me. So what does that mean specifically, not platitude-y? That means that I'm willing to do the work. It means that I'm willing to think through the problems and think through them well. It means that I'm able to communicate those things well. It means that you're putting the needs of those that trust you before your own, and very importantly, willing to take the arrows for those decisions that you make. And it can be lonely. It is sometimes. And it's also hard if you feel like you can see the future but you do have to spend a fair amount of time helping the team get there. And I think that that's one of the things that we've done well at VTV is seen the future and stayed the course despite uh despite objection to it.
Yeah, and despite external pressures. I like the way you said that, John, that you have to be, I always say increasingly worthy, right? But you have to be worthy of the charge. The only reason I add increasingly is because it sounds more active. There's a preparation,
I like it.
mindset that goes into it. But I do believe that you take that on as one of the leaders of your organization and for all the other sites as well, and most probably evidently demonstrated by the fellowship program that you've helped premiere as one of the best in the world. I want to open it up to others now. We've just only scratched the surface of identifying things like burnout or when somebody just needs maybe a minute or some feedback that says, hey, the way you think you're coming off might not be exactly how it's actually landing. All of those kinds of coachable moments. But what questions do any of you have for Dr. Berdahl as part of the conversation about team members, roles and responsibilities, and life balance?
I have a question. And Matt or John, however you would answer it, how do you define burnout?
Good question.
You or me, Matt?
Why don't you take it first?
I would define burnout as sustained and increasing apathy towards the work that you used to love. And I have no idea what the technical definition is, but that's what I see and I see it manifest by starting to care about the things that don't matter. By starting to write narratives in our mind that are not representative of what's true and what's accurate. And then that leads to this spiral because you get further behind every day. And then you're like, screw it.
Mhm.
This isn't what am I even doing? And that's how I think that it goes. So that's how I define it.
I think that's a really insightful definition, John. The first one was increasing apathy, right, or disdain for the work you used to love. And the second one is an increasing or more sensitive, higher value placed on, how did you say the second one?
Stuff that doesn't matter.
Stuff that doesn't matter. And I think for me, it was certainly the second part, and maybe caring too much about the stuff that didn't matter, so much so that. Uh, I just didn't love who I was becoming with all that. And I didn't actually call it burnout until months and months afterwards. And I'm not sure that I would still categorize it because I felt like I was killing it, but I just was kind of a dick, you know?
Yeah. Um, I, I, and Matt, the other thing that I would say is that another characteristic of burnout is you are not bringing more energy than you take. Or another way to say that is you're not bringing the best out in the people around you.
Hmm. Also good. Good question, David. Kate, you had one.
Sure. Well, I have like five. I'm trying to narrow it down. So I've laid it on two. The first one is you avid researcher, entrepreneur, phenomenal physician, part of one of the most well-respected ophthalmology practices with one of the most well-respected ophthalmologists in the country, in Dr. Thompson. Uh, you talked about your family and your kids. Your bio on your website talks about your hobbies. And so how do you balance all of that ambition, with things outside of, being an ophthalmologist? So you can answer that however you'd like. And then the second question is, you said you're interested in astronomy. So are you an Elon Musk, SpaceX geek?
Yeah, okay, great. So I'll answer the first question first with a true confession. I don't play guitar. I played guitar for about an hour and a half, but it did get on my hobbies because my hobbies list was too short. So maybe that was Matt's marketing spin. I'm not sure, but I'm not quite as well rounded as my bio would say. The real answer to your question around like how do you do it all, I think is the gist of it, is that you get great people around you and you trust them, like Matt, like Sarah, like David, and you let them go and have the freedom and the decision making to make the decisions and then earn the benefit or the consequence of those decisions and help provide guidance when it's helpful. So there's very few things that I do these days that don't need to be me. But I don't love the word delegate. I really don't, because I think that that's like saying something that's not worthy of you. It's no one person is more worthy than another person. It's just that we have different roles. And so over time it's developed into a situation where I am just so lucky to be surrounded by extraordinary people who are also worthy of the trust placed in them. And then they go out and do great things and do great work. And what you can't do is hold too tightly on
Yeah.
that. You have to let people, even if, like, okay, are you going to redirect if you're 90% sure something is not good and it's a big deal? Yes. But if you're 55 or 60% sure and it's a moderate deal, let them encourage them to run with it and make the best out of it. So the real answer is to spend your time on what actually matters, and a lot of it doesn't. Surround yourself with people that are great and let them run. And then only try to do the things that need to be you. Nobody else can be Tommy and Annabelle's dad. Nobody else can be when Sarah led my galley as opposed to all of VTV in Sioux Falls, nobody else could be her surgeon. And so nobody else can be Tammy's husband. So the things that have to be you, make sure you're doing those great and focusing on what matters. Elon Musk. Uh, yeah, so I'm a bit of a space geek and get to do some cool stuff with NASA and da 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 da. But since you asked the question specifically, I'll answer it specifically. I used to like Elon Musk more. I bought a Tesla in 2018 in Sioux Falls, was rear-ended 3 days after I bought it. I bought it not because I like cars, I don't. I bought it because I loved one dude that was changing how the combustion engine worked. And then I wish he wouldn't have bought Twitter and got kind of weird. Just go and like make reusable rockets and help us get to Mars and get internet to everybody and drill big holes under Las Vegas. That's amazing. Don't feel like you need to control the narrative. So Elon Musk scale of 1 to 10, now 6.75, 8 years ago, 9.5.
I'm going to be in Sioux Falls in a couple of months, and I'm going to find an hour on your time to debate that.
All right,
But
where do you put
not,
him? What do you give him? Give him a
10 out
number.
of 10. 10,
10
10
out of
out of 10.
10.
10, yeah, 10
Whoa.
out of 10.
All right,
I
giddy
think
up.
he's the most consequential human to, well, outside of Jesus, one of the most consequential entrepreneurs and business people to ever walk the face of the earth.
Totally agree with that. Just he's gotten a little bit weird, but can't wait for the debate. And we
Yeah.
agree, net positive to the world by a long ways.
I love it. Thanks for sharing.
What other questions are out there?
I've got one. I mean, Matt,
Dallas,
you
yeah.
made a major life change, and I think you were one of those kind people that pointed out to me that I might need to consider making some adjustments to my life before I did. What have you learned since then, and how have you improved upon that experience to make sure you don't get back to a place where you were?
Yeah, it's a good question. And listen, I think that even you've observed some of it on this call today, right? Even looking back, there's a distinctive different viewpoint depending on who you were in the room when it happened. And I think you're seeing firsthand what one of the things we do as human beings, if we allow ourselves to get too much in our own head, too much in our own space, too much self-loathing, etc. And it's good to have people around you who remind you of how it actually went, regardless of your own, negative mindset. The second thing, and so I think that answer, Dallas, is I'm not done yet. Okay. Um, and then as far as how you decide to reconcile your professional life, I really do believe that one of the things that I did study, though I wasn't asked to study anything on my sabbatical, was Sabbath. Was what is the root of sabbatical? What does rest actually mean? And I really have tried to understand that better and to live into it a little bit more. Is there work that I'm willing to just walk past? Not necessarily on Sunday, but like just in general, because it's between me and another thing that happens to be more important at the time, or it's between me and nothing happens to be what's important at the time. And those are the professional and spiritual push-ups I'm trying to do right now. As far as professionally, what I've started to do over the last 3 years is just like manna, try to go pick up what's out in front of me today. Can't store it up. I can't really claim much credit for it other than having done a good job for good people with good people for a lot of years and still have a lot of people, many of you on the call, who introduced me to new and fun things where I think I might be able to contribute or my team could. But as far as a long, life song narrative, I feel like I'm not all that concerned about that. I feel, I just feel like it's today. It's just today. Do the best next thing in front of you. And that's been a little bit of perspective that I've learned along the way. There's folks on the line, from my own team, Shannon and Rachel and people I interact with, Gaynor on boards, and folks from other companies, Haley and Dylan, and I mean all you guys, right? You've seen us in different points along the way, even you, Dallas. But one of the reasons we have this webinar is just to remind us all that, hey, the work is good and it's even important. So important that it could be a calling. And yet it can take too much of our identity, too much of our, why we think we're here, that's inappropriate. And that's the only thing I'm trying to kind of hold in, openly. I don't actually believe in life balance. I think if you love work and you're called to it, you can just keep going. And I do delight in certain parts of the work in that way, kind of like my wife delights in the garden, work.
That's awesome.
Joel, what question do you have for John? You've known John and I probably the longest of anybody on this call.
Well, I have, and I'm grateful for you, for both of you. And John, you certainly, I hope you remember because it was impactful on me when you were finishing up your fellowship with Dr. Lindstrom, and we went and had a nice Thai lunch in Minneapolis, and before you were going to Sioux Falls. And at that time when I first met you, what really amazed me was your humility. And I'm no man's judge of humility, but it was obvious to me in you. And I've seen how you've lived that in your career and in your practice. And I see even throughout VTV just a high degree of humility. And again, I'm saying I'm no person's judge. In fact, I've learned that when I think I'm humble, I'm the furthest from it. So I just how do you keep that going? The success that you all have in your practice. How do you remain humble? I guess is the question I'm trying to ask. Maybe not so eloquently.
Yeah, no, thank you, Joel. And I do remember, and it's great I do remember that dinner, and it was great. It's great to see you. It's funny you say that because I, if you asked me what's your greatest vice, I would say pride, and pride in the opposite of actual humility. And and I think that for a number of us, it can be. I appreciate that I have the appearance of humility. And I hope that occasionally I actually have humility.
Mm-hmm.
Where I feel it the most is when I'm with a vulnerable patient, and like on a phone call I just had, earlier with a patient really going through a hard thing. That's where the humanness really, really, really connects us. But I'm honestly, I wish I was as humble as you suggest. I'm not. I wish I was. The As far as though like VTV in general, I think that it's a balance between a bit of a swagger and a bit of a like do the right thing humility that I do believe, and this is something I do believe, no one human being is more valuable than another human being. I have that in my bones. I believe that VTV believes that in its bones too. And I believe that we believe that it is like, no kidding, an honor when someone chooses us for their care. And I'll give an example of that. We'd get a lot of cornea transplants from Western North Dakota down in Sioux Falls, 8 hours away for those that don't know. And we'd have people fly in from around the country to do different things. It's not in their best interest to come and have us do it in Sioux Falls. It's way better that Mike Greenwood is now in Fargo. And it's way better for somebody in New York City to get their care locally with somebody, because if things don't go perfect, then they don't for us too. They've got a caring, talented doctor locally. And I think that we do live that piece well, that no other human being is less valuable or more valuable than we are, that we're earnestly grateful for the trust that people put in us, and that we will do the right thing for that patient no matter what, even if it's not us. And I guess that would be my answer to how has VTV acted humbly, even if sometimes we also believe we have something special to offer, and people should know that. And so we hold those two things in tension.
That's great. Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
John, I want to thank you for spending this time with us today. We could have gone a lot longer, and I wish we could because there's so many other questions that I want to ask of you just to catch up, but also that I think other people would benefit from because you're a good human, you're a deep thinker, and you are an encourager to others. Personally, John, I want to thank you. You know, you give credit to people who are in the room when you make big life decisions, and you've been in the room when I've made a lot of them, and you've been a great mentor to me and an even finer friend. And so I appreciate that you joined us today, and mostly I appreciate that you would just share your life with me. I'll say this because we say it openly in our center, and I still say our, but I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, buddy. And that streak goes two ways. I really do.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We've come to a place where we're finishing our session for today. In just a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking with another friend of ours, Dr. Christine Funky, and she's going to be talking about, let me see here, I want to make sure I get it right here, how she's implemented interventional glaucoma at her private equity-owned clinic and surgery centers across several doctors, a ton of ODs inside their organization. It's going to be a great session. It's 2 weeks from now. Next week is summer vacation for the Jensen clan. But thanks for joining us today. Practice habits is where practices become habit, habit becomes character, and character, John, is what builds a legacy. Thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for taking your time with us, and apologies for my internet in Northeast South Dakota.
Get a Starlink. Get a Starlink.
Yeah, preach it, brother. You win, Kate. I go paws up. Elon Musk, so tap.
There you go. There you go. Good job. See ya.
See you guys.